Hey girl, let's talk crime. So today we are going to be discussing the 1977 Oklahoma Girl Scout murders. June 12th, 1977 was supposed to be 2 weeks of pure fun for more than 100 girls who arrived at Camp Scott, which is located northeast of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Camp Scott has been in operation since 1928, and so many girls have gone through these 2 weeks of fun every year since 1928. And this year in 1977 wasn't going to be any different, except it was. 10-year-old Doris Denise Milner was initially really excited about going to camp. Some of her friends had gotten accepted as well. She had sold enough cookies to be able to go. And then at the last minute, her friends did end up deciding not to go. She said that she didn't want to go. She wasn't sure if she would like it, but her mother did end up making the decision for her to go, stating that it may make her more independent. And she may even meet friends, even though Doris was really sad about leaving her 5-year-old sister behind. She did end up going to Camp Scott. 8-year-old Lori Farmer was one of the youngest Girl Scouts there, and prior to her arriving, she couldn't decide if she wanted to go to Camp Scott or if she wanted to go to another camp that was sponsored by her local YMCA. Her mother did end up making the decision for her to come to Camp Scott. Michelle Gousset had been years prior and was really excited about spending a week with her friends over this 2-week period, because you would either pick the first or the second week. She had been before, and so she was just really excited. The only thing that she was concerned about is she wanted to ensure that her parents would be able to take care of her plants, because she was a plant girl and she really, really loved and cared for her plants. On June 12th, 1977, the day of arrival, a hopeful camp counselor had arrived, and she stated that the parking lot was completely packed. She did see Doris, and she said that she kind of stood out to her because she was the only African-American girl there, and she also looked extremely nervous. So she approached Doris as well as her mother, and Doris said that she was feeling homesick. She didn't want to go. She offered her to walk down to the buses with her, and she did so, and then they rode to the cookie trail, to where they would actually be sleeping at. Camp Scott was about 410 acres, and it also had a creek running through the property, and it was surrounded by like a forest area. So all of the units were named after Native American tribes, and they were, this is what it was. This is what they looked like. So they were tents that were kind of on a wooden platform, and there were 4 girls to a tent. So on the night of June 12th, there was a thunderstorm, and so there wasn't a lot of activities that they could do, plus with it being dark, and so they did all huddle up and go to sleep. So Michelle, Lori, and Denise were all in one tent, and their tent was kind of off to the side. They were all like placed with space between them, but theirs was a little bit more kind of far off. And I will show a map. Hold on. Okay, so this was where their tent was. Kiowa campsite, I believe is how you pronounce it. If that's incorrect, I do apologize. So this is where the 3 girls were sleeping that night. So in the middle of the night, one of the camp counselors did hear what sounded like moaning. And so she did get up to investigate. She didn't see anything, and so she just assumed that it was like a wild animal, and then ended up going back to bed. There was another camper that was woken up because someone had come into the tent that she was in with a flashlight. And then someone else did say that they heard someone crying out for their mother from these girls' tents. And these were younger girls, like not the counselors. And so they did not know what to do. And so they did end up going back to sleep. The following morning, one of the camp counselors, Carla Wilhite, decided that she wanted to get a shower in really early before the girls had gotten up that morning. And so she had headed up to the showers around 6 a.m. And unfortunately, that is when she discovered the deceased bodies of Michelle, Lori, and Denise. Two of the girls had been stuffed in the bottom of sleeping bags, and then the third was lying on top of all of the sleeping bags. They had been strangled, two had been bludgeoned, and all three had been raped. This discovery was found about 150 yards from their tent. So the camp began to send all of the other girls home while this was being investigated. And so as authorities are searching for clues, they did come across a flashlight, a red flashlight that had like a piece of trash bag that was taped over it. And then there was also newspaper that was stuffed in side so that the batteries would not rattle. And then a few days later, tips came in from some squirrel hunters about a cave nearby. And so once they did go and search that cave, they did find masking tape with a piece of plastic that was stuck to it that also matched the tape that was found on the flashlight from the crime scene. Also found in this cave were two wedding photographs. A prison employee had came forward saying that he recognized those, and at that point they did believe that they had found their suspect. 33-year-old Jean Leroy Hart. And the reason why that prison employee had recognized those photographs is because he had actually had them developed at the prison doing a project while he was incarcerated. So at the time of these murders, he had been on the run for 4 years. He is a convicted burglar as well as rapist. And it was his second escape, by the way. Authorities did state that this cave belonged to Hart and that he had family in the area. He was an expert woodsman, and also his mother had lived in this area, kind of pointing more to the fact that they believe that it did belong to him. 10 months after the murders of Michelle, Lori, and Denise, Jean Leroy Hart was captured about 50 miles away from the camp in a shack that was kind of found in like a woodsy area. So Jean did deny having anything to do with the Girl Scout murders. He stated he did not do it, and he actually started to gather quite a few supporters in the community who felt like he was being kind of the scapegoat for the police department, and the Cherokee Tribal Council had even donated more than $12,000 toward his defense fund. So almost 2 years after the murders, the trial did begin. There was evidence found, like hair samples as well as semen. However, DNA would not be introduced into the 1980s, so they did not have what it took to identify certain things at the time that this was happening. So the hair was inconclusive, and the footprint that they found did not match the size of Hart's foot. And on March 20th, 1979, the jurors did announce that he was found not guilty. So Jean was still going to jail because remember, he was out because he escaped. So he still had 300 years to do for rape and burglary charges. However, on June 4th, 1979, Jean Leroy Hart died from a heart attack while in prison. So let's go back to April of 1977, a few months prior to the girls arriving for the 2-week camp getaway. So there was training happening, and one of the girls had gone back to her tent, and she had seen that her things had been ransacked through. Her donuts were gone, and then there was a letter in there stating that they were on a mission to kill 3 girls. Now, this was taken to the director, and articles say different things. Some things say that it was just assumed that it was a prank. Other things said that another article stated that they had questioned, and some of the girls had admitted that they were the ones that had written the letter. In 2022, it was made public that DNA evidence had excluded everyone except for Hart. This information was known to the family since 2019, and they didn't release it to the public until 2022 at the family's request. Although it is strongly believed that Jean Leroy Hart is the only one responsible for the murders of Michelle, Lori, and Denise, this is still an unsolved case. Anyone with any information about the murders is urged to call 405-848-6724.